right. Hello everyone, my name is Pelletier, and today I'll be speaking about our battery metals vision and roadmap work. And I thought I'd start with a recent headline, which some of you may have seen in the news over the last week, which was essentially speaking to the fact that Canada has recently been ranked second in terms of its global battery metal values chain potential. And this is really good news, right? I think we can all appreciate that there's a few criteria in here that Canada does very well, and it speaks to an immense potential. But it's important to really take that potential piece as part of this consideration. When we look at the challenge before us, we really are looking at a very long road and a big demand profile. So to really illustrate that challenge, you can see here we have essentially our demands for battery metals going forward from 2020 through to 2030. And you can see that we're talking about orders of magnitude on change, right? 5-fold increase in cobalt, 5-fold increase on lithium, 10-fold almost for manganese. I don't have to really probably say to this audience, but when you consider that mining timelines to bring a new mine online is on the order of 10 years, this represents a massive challenge. But it's also a massive opportunity. So when we look at the role that these battery metals play in deploying our decarbonization technologies, it really does become clear that this is an imperative to develop these resources and to do so in a manner that is responsible, sustainable, and really leading in that regard. And the fact is, it isn't just battery metals. This isn't just mining and exploration we're talking about. This is an entire value chain. So these materials are in fact refined into specialty chemicals. So there's a chemical production component to this. There's a battery component, right? We're taking these materials and turning them into cathode active materials, into batteries themselves, and ultimately to find their way into these decarbonizing technologies. So the end user applications, Megan just had a great presentation on the EV adoptions. This is what these materials are here to support. And finally, to close this loop, the recycling is particularly important as well. We want to ensure that this is a circular economy that can continue to develop and thrive in a sustainable manner going forward. And so really this is where we, as the Battery Metals Association of Canada, wanted to try and approach this problem, to say we see this immense opportunity and we want to ensure that Canada captures the entire value proposition from this supply chain. And over the last 20 months or so, we've been partnering with the Energy Futures Lab to run a series of workshops and sessions to engage this network across the battery metals value chain. And it's proven to be a very fruitful relationship. We convened, as I was saying, a number of sessions to establish a clear vision for this battery metals industry, one that is held to a very high environmental, social governance standard. And we also looked at the landscape itself, so looking at the who's who in this space, what are the gaps, what are the challenges, and ultimately to start organizing ourselves within these different disciplines to set some targets, start working on some actions, and ultimately advance the sector as a whole. So I'm very pleased to bring forward today that this ultimately culminated in a roadmap report for Canada's battery value chain. And this actually goes through in great detail, it's about 80 pages, but it really makes a clear case for the need to develop these resources and actionable targets to get there. And it's a product of a very collaborative effort. You can see a number of different participants on the left there. So we're very proud, and I know many in the room were a big part of this work as well. So thank you again on that front. There were a few key components to this report that really came to surface on a number of occasions. The first was Canada needs to set these targets. We need a bold strategy in order to meet these targets and ensure that we're at the table for this opportunity. We need to systematically focus on building homegrown capacity. So this isn't a question of solely bringing in multinationals that may build the supply chain to their requirements. We want to also ensure that we're fostering that Canadian element to this supply chain. Third is that the midstream is particularly important. This really serves as a linchpin for the broader value chain. It pulls the upstream to the downstream. And unfortunately, this is probably one of the least developed segments within the Canadian landscape. So really, this is one of the focus areas for the Battery Metals Association of Canada. And fourth is that having these strategy and roadmap documents really serves as a show of stability to really catalyze investment in the space. And so it serves a dual purpose in that regard as well. So in terms of our ongoing work and actions, really we've broken these out into kind of four main areas. The first is on the mining stage, where we have really work to do to unlock these financial mechanisms to accelerate the development of nickel, lithium, graphite, and rare earth metals. And there are others as well, but our report focuses on these. Within that space, you will note that the federal government has actually taken some of this initiative on the financing piece. So there are flow-through shares, kind of tax advantages that are in place and being worked on at present. Second is on the chemical production. And here, as I was saying, this is one of the least developed segments within this space. And so they're big ticket items, they're capital intensive, and it really serves us to start to consider a hub and spoke model where we're consolidating some of this refining capacity and producing these battery active materials in a geographically optimized manner. BMAC is actually advancing a Western hub concept for this very purpose, and that will serve as kind of our focus for the short term here. Third is on the cell manufacturing. In this regard, there is a need to innovate on the actual production lines to focus dominantly on the nickel-rich and lithium iron phosphate chemistries. And those are really kind of the two dominant chemistries that will be of focus in North America going forward. And lastly, on the recycling piece, that extended producer responsibility is very important, and setting those standards such that those supplies can then be reintegrated into that circular chain forms kind of the fourth action item there. So I think just to close, the resonating, kind of the impact story here, you could say, is that we have a long road ahead, right? It's imperative the government and industry continue to work together on these challenges, and that we focus really on that homegrown capacity. And I think one of the things that many in the EFL can appreciate is that probably one of the best ways to do that is to continue to advance these collective targets that are informed by our network and working groups, and to increase that coordination. And so as I leave you today, I think in the story framework, really the way I see it is that we are truly at the beginning of this story, and that having this continued expansion of our network, working together to advance this, is really what's going to move the needle. And I have a number of other points and numbers I'd love to chat with you about afterwards, so I'll leave it there for now. And thank you all very much for your interest in this topic.